Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to do a little bit of a special review. This is review number 2500, and as I always do with these milestone reviews, I just want to give a massive thank you to those of you who have supported the channel over the last 7.5 years it is now. Whether you've liked, subscribed, shared, commented, sent me some beer, shown me around somewhere, you know, I just want to give a massive thank you to you from the bottom of my heart. It's been awesome to do these videos for you over the last, as I say, 7.5 years now. July 2013 was when it all started, and you know, as I've told you before, I started this whole thing just as a way to document all the different beers that I was trying, and you know, it turned out that people seem to quite like it as well. So yeah, it's awesome to have all of you guys following the channel, of course, and you guys are one of the greatest sources of information when it comes to beer as well, and I've managed to meet some of you over the years too, which has obviously been great. So you know, just a massive shout out to you guys in this video here, review number 2500. It's just kind of crazy, to be honest with you. So yeah, we've got a little bit of a special beer to have a look at today. So since, as I say, for me, one of the greatest things about this channel is the support that you guys give, I thought I would have a look at probably one of the most special beers that I've been sent actually by one of my followers. So for this one we are going to go to Belgium, and we're going to have a look at a beer from a brewery that I've never tried anything from before, and this one, it is actually quite surprising that I've never tried a beer from this brewery yet, considering how well known and well respected they are. So as I say, we're going to go down to Belgium for this one. We are going to go to the Brussels region, and we're having a look at my first beer from Brouwerij Boon. So this one comes to you from Halle. I believe it's a little town called Halle to the southwest of Brussels, and we're going to have a look at a 2016 vintage of the Kriek Mariage Parfait, and this comes in at 8% ABV. So yeah, the Kriek, of course, is basically a cherry lambic, and this beer was very, very kindly given to me in the last box from Davor Šireč down in Slovenia. Yeah, he is one of the guys who has supported the channel massively over the last few years. He's the one who's given me a lot of the Slovenian beers to review for you, and he always throws in a few interesting Belgian things from his cellar as well. But yeah, you know, there's some great people like Davor following the channel. We've got Chris living in Belgium, we've got Riku up in Finland as well, who's been sending me beers. We've got other guys like Severio and stuff like that who are waiting to kind of send me beers. We've got Håkan, who very recently sent me some Sundsvall beers as well. But yeah, Davor I think Davor might well have been the first subscriber to send me beers actually. That was pretty damn awesome. But yeah, to have something like this to review for review number 2500 is pretty damn special. And as I say, this one is dedicated to all of you guys who have been following the channel over the last 7.5 years. Just insanity. And I also want to give a special shout out in this video to the Scotland's national team who qualified for the Euros yesterday, and that's awesome. You know, I remember watching them at France '98, and that's the last time I've seen them in one of the big tournaments. So that's going to be awesome next year to see Scotland in the Euros. Really, really looking forward to that. So yeah, celebrating review number 2500 along with the Scottish national team qualifying for the Euros. That's just, it's really quite special, this. And again, as I say, a huge thank you to all of those of you who have followed the channel over the years. But yeah, let's get on with this one then. Very curious to see how this beer turns out. So yeah, like I say, a 2016 vintage of the Kriek Mariage Parfait, coming in at 8% ABV from Brouwerij Boon in Halle to the southwest of Brussels in Belgium. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my future reviews that I'll do from Brouwerij Boon. I do have another one of their beers back in Scotland that I will review for you soon, so you'll see that maybe around Christmas time. We'll see about doing that. But yeah, there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Belgian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly, although not as regularly as I would like. We will see about addressing that over the next little while. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated, as we've said earlier. So yeah, let's go on to the history section of this video then, on to my brewery notes. So Brouwerij Boon, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Halle, in Lambic, which is to the southwest of Brussels in Flemish Brabant in Belgium. But the current brewery company was founded by Frank Boon back in 1978 when he bought the De Wit's Brewery, Cafe and Huisestekerij, if I'm pronouncing that right. Of course, remember when it comes to Dutch and Flemish, they pronounce the G like a H kind of sound. But the history of the brewery though actually goes back way further than that. It can trace its roots back to 1680 when Jean-Baptiste Claes opened a juniper distillery in Lambeek, and his business did very well, but he also began beer brewing in the Honzocht hamlet within the town too. But after the French Revolution, which was 1789, the brewery began to decline, and then it was rented by Jean-Baptiste Paul from 1809. His son Louis Paul bought the hamlet buildings in 1860, and he founded the Saint Roch or Saint Roch, I guess, Saint Roch, Saint Roch, I guess, depending on which language you like. Belgium, of course, is mainly a dual language country, but there is a little bit of German in there in the southeast as well. But yeah, he founded the Saint Roch, Saint Roch brewery, and he began brewing Lambic and Huise beers in there as well. But in 1898, the brewery passed to the Troch family, who introduced steam power to the brewery. And during the First World War, the copper equipment was actually seized, but they did manage to restart, but eventually they went bankrupt in 1927 owing to the depression that was going on at the time. But later the brewery was bought by the De Wit's family, and then René De Wit's began brewing Huise beers once again at around a rate of 15,000 litres of beer per year. But in 1978 René De Wit's sold the brewery to Frank Boon, and then later in 1984 he bought a former metallurgical plant, basically like a, I don't know, could you call it a blacksmith or something like this, and he transformed this facility into a brewery. But they later entered a partnership with Palm Brewery, who are now part of Bavaria from what I understand, which is quite a big group. They're from the Netherlands actually, if I remember rightly, but they took a 50% stake in the company, and they gradually helped them kind of up the capacity of the brewery. But in 2013 they built a new brewery in Fonteinstraat, which is very close to the River Seine on the Wallonie border. Which is where they still operate today. But I think in 2014 this agreement ended, and so the brewery is now completely, 2014 or 2016, that agreement ended, so the brewery is once again completely family owned by the Boon family. But the brewery are also part of the High Council for Artisanal Lambics, or HORAL as it's known, and Frank Boon is the president of this organisation from what I understand. So yeah, these guys do various different types of Lambic beers. They have got the original Huise, however you want to pronounce it, which is basically a blend of, you know, 1-year-old Lambic, young Lambic, and then 2 to 3-year-old Lambic. That is your kind of main thing. But yeah, I think they've got Faro, they've got I think they might have a Framboise, they've got Kriek of course, which is the cherry one, and yeah, they do lots and lots of different beers. But yeah, I think in total when I looked at Untappd, there was about 60 different beers, 60 different beers listed from Brouwerij Boon. And there's obviously various different vintages of a lot of these as well, as you often get with these kind of lambic breweries. But yeah, that's all the historical information that I can really tell you about Brouwerij Boon. That was all I was able to find out from the likes of Wikipedia and lambicinfo.be and stuff like this. So yeah, quite an interesting history to this company, I have to say. And yeah, it's quite interesting to see how they've kind of evolved along, you know, being part of a cafe, and then, you know, just evolving from there. It's quite cool to learn how far back the whole lambic beer tradition goes, and these beers are very, very interesting, as I say. But yeah, if you want to learn more about Brouwerij Boon, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and if you do want a little bit more information about all those different beers, either check the website or have a little look at Untappd, and you can see all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, as I say, 61 listed in there, but you know, there's a new vintage each year, so I'm not sure how Untappd kind of correlates the vintages of these things. I think these days they seem to have one, I've noticed recently that they have one thread, and if you go into, for example, the 2016 thread, then it says a vintage of Oude Oude Kriek Mariage Parfait. It kind of comes up with this these days. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this one then. I'm very curious to see what this has in store for us. You can see the bottle is sweating a little bit. We're still fairly warm here, even though it's winter. It is getting a little bit chilly, but in the houses and stuff it's always warm, obviously. But yeah, this one is the Oude Kriek Mariage Parfait. You can see there is the nice label on this one, 2016 vintage. Again, massive thank you to Davor for making this one possible, and you can see it's got one of these nice kind of open tops on it here. It says on the back here, it has it in English, Kriek Mariage Parfait is an old style kriek of exceptional excellence. 400 grams of wild cherries per litre are fermented together with a strong lambic of spontaneous fermentation and aged on oak fodders, which of course are these big kind of, it's almost like a massive barrel with the top kind of cut off it. They're aged in these big oak fodders, and then Kriek Mariage Parfait is naturally clarified and ferments in the bottle. It is unsweetened, unfiltered, unpasteurised, and has no artificial flavourings, preservatives or colourings added, and it's brewed in Lambeek, the village that gave Lambic its name, www.boon.be. And there of course you can see the European territorial symbol on it there as well. A lot of things of course within the European Union are territorially protected in terms of trademarking and stuff like this. So yeah, pretty damn cool I have to say, and like I say, really nice to have a beer like this from Davor for review number 2500. I really have grown to love the Lambics over the last few years, and the main reason for that is thanks to Chris Contreras, who I mentioned earlier. Obviously more recently he's been sending me the kind of crazy American beers, but he sent me two de Fontainens and I forget what the other one was, a Cantillon, that was it. He sent me a Cantillon, so yeah, he sent me 3 Lambics, and that was the second box of beer that he sent me actually, so it was really thanks to Chris Contreras that I managed to get into these whole kind of Lambic beers, because I liked the Flanders Reds before, I'd had them, but you know, the Lambics was just something that I hadn't gotten into particularly. So yeah, I kind of credit my now love, I guess you could say, of Lambic beers to Chris, and so this one, it's awesome to have this from Davor. Davor and Chris, I'm sure, could have some very interesting conversations when it comes to these Belgian beers, because Davor's cellar list is ridiculous, it really is. But yeah, 8% Kriek, this one. Essentially a cherry lambic. So let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm really curious about this. This is just an awesome beer to have for review number 2500, a 4-year-old lambic. There you can see black top cap on this, black top of this little foily thing, well, foily, wiry thing. But let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. Ooh. There we are. Nice little bit of smoke on the opening, and we'll get this guy out and into the glass. So yeah, the other thing I should say about this, it was actually Davor's idea that I review this beer for you for 2500, because I was chatting to him and he said, I said, oh, I need to start thinking about what to do for 2500, and he was like, oh, why not do that Mariage Parfait that I sent you? And I was like, it had actually crossed my mind when he said it, but I had actually been thinking to save this one for number 3000, but you know, I've never reviewed anything from Boon before, and you know, there's no time like the present actually. Yeah, obviously the Lambics, you can age them, but yeah, I think beer, for me, beer is supposed to be drunk rather than aged and stuff like this. But yeah, obviously there's certain circumstances where you kind of can and you can experiment with it a little bit. But you know, I just kind of thought I really want to try my first Boon beer, so here we are. And yeah, again, massive thank you to Davor for making this possible, and also thank you to Chris as well for getting me into these Lambic beers. So yeah, as you can see and as you would expect, if we shine the light through this beer's poured a lovely kind of burgundy maroon colour. You would expect this from a Kriek, of course, but yeah, lovely burgundy maroon colour. It is like the kind of Heart of Midlothian football shirt, as we always say. It is a little bit like that, and you would kind of expect this sort of colour from the thing. It's almost the same colour as this little label up here actually. One thing I didn't point out actually is that it does have Boon, I guess that's Frank Boon's signature on the back there. I don't know how well you can see that, but yeah, I'm guessing that's what that is. But yeah, beautiful looking beer, this one, I have to say. The colour of it, lovely burgundy maroon sort of thing. Looks great. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, but you can see a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. The beer itself is fairly hazy. You know, we can't really say haze for days with these, of course, like we would with the New England IPAs. 375ml bottle. You can see there is just a thin foamy layer of a kind of creamy, very slightly pink tinged head on this one. But overall, it does look very, very nice. I mean, I really like how this beer goes together. These Krieks always look very nice. So yeah, nothing overly surprising about the appearance of this one when we open it up, but let's have a closer look at that aroma then and see how we get on. I love these. I love the smell of these Lambic beers, I really do. That smells beautiful, it really does. Straight away with this one, the first thing you're going to notice about this beer, and I'm guessing it's a product of the aging, is that it comes across really, really nice and smooth. I think if you have these beers younger, you know, they do, the aroma is just a little bit more pungent, whereas I think when you let them mature a little bit, they just smoothen out and you get the lovely kind of oakiness and things like that. If it had been possible, it would have been cool to do a sort of side-by-side 2016 vintage, you know, 29, I guess it'd be the 2019 one we would get at the moment. But yeah, it would have been nice to do a side-by-side, but you know, we've got what it is, yeah, this one, the aroma out of this is lovely and smooth, but you do get, yeah, it really is lovely with this one. You get that, you can smell straight away with this beer that kind of big, that nice kind of big but also quite smooth acidity to it. Lovely, really deep, juicy cherries coming out of this one. You know, for me, these sort of sour beers and lambic beers, I always find that they're not quite as complex in the aroma as other beer styles. And I think I've said this in other reviews as well when I've tasted the lambics. These ones, the kind of number of flavours, if you like, is not quite as many as you'll get in other styles and things, but it's all about just how the balance of the thing. For me, sour beers are all about the transition that they make. It's when you take them in and the transition they make from being like really sharp and puckering in the beginning to just smoothing out and giving you all the woody and fruity flavours. For me, that's what makes a good sour beer, is just having a really nice transition of flavour. But the more that you smell this beer, the juicier those cherries get. You could be forgiven for thinking there's a little bit of a kind of blackcurranty, blackberry sort of juiciness sitting underneath the cherries in this one, but the cherries have a very, very deep and really quite big sharpness to them actually. I really, really like that about this beer, I have to say. So yeah, lovely big juicy cherries in there. You can smell the big kind of sharpness and sourness off them as well, but underneath that I think you've got a wee bit of a kind of almost, you've got a little bit of a kind of plummy depth to the beer. You've got a little bit of a blackcurranty, blackberry sort of thing in there as well. They almost come across as being a little touch candied, but yeah, behind the fruits you've got a lot of really interesting things as well. I mean, you can smell that lovely smooth oaky quality to the beer. There is a wee bit of that kind of vanilla, like when it within I think the thing that gives the beer a little bit of an almost that gives the beer an almost kind of candied edge, if you like, is that kind of oaky, woody, vanilla presence. You really get a lot of interesting things from that, to be honest with you. The aroma of this beer is really damn lovely actually. I mean, I love the smooth backbone that this one has, that lovely smooth oakiness which just seems to form the backbone of the beer. You get a little bit of vanilla kind of sitting on top of it, and yeah, it is quite nice. You do get a little bit of grassiness and floral quality out of this beer, a wee touch of earthiness as well. There are a few kind of hoppy remnants in there. I mean, when this beer has been sitting in the bottle for 4 years, most of the hoppy character is going to have dropped out. And the thing with these lambic beers as well is that they put old hops in them because they don't want the bitterness kind of competing with the sourness of the beer, so they do tend to put old hops in. It's usually something like, you know, Styrian Goldings, or you know, like an old Czech Sats, or Hallertau, or Titnanger or something like that. You know, it's one of these kind of noble type hops that they'll use, and they'll just put basically old hops in this beer so that the bitterness doesn't overtake the kind of sharpness and sourness of the beer. But yeah, the aroma of this is absolutely lovely. The smoothness that you get, that big oaky, woody smoothness in there, that forms the backbone of the beer. There's a wee bit of a nice kind of vanilla quality in there, and you've also got You also have a nice little bit of a sort of Werther's Original type kind of thing to this beer as well, just a little bit of that sort of just a tiny little hint of a brown sugary note to the beer as well. So yeah, lots of really interesting and very deep and satisfying aromas out of this one. Take a bit of time to enjoy that aroma before you get stuck in, but we're going to have a taste of this beer now and just see how we get on. So this one is the Kriek Mariage, the Oude Kriek, I guess I should say, the Oude Kriek Mariage Parfait, coming in at 8% ABV, a 2016 vintage from Brouwerij Boon in Halle in Lambic to the southwest of Brussels in Belgium. You know, awesome beer to have to this one. Massive thank you to Davor for making this review possible, and a big thank you to all of you guys that have supported the channel over the last 7.5 years now. So yeah guys, a big cheers to you guys, cheers to the Scotland national team, really happy about that, and you know, thank you for your support again over the last 7.5 years. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, Skål, Prost, Santé. Ooh, that is really nice actually. I expected this one, this is interesting, I expected it to be really sharp and puckering in the beginning, but it's actually really nice and juicy, come to think of it. It's got a very nice juiciness to it, and the sourness actually comes out a little bit later on. That's not what I expected. I do wonder if that's kind of what happens with the aging, as I say, if the more woody, barrel aging-y characters come out of this one, if the beer just kind of mellows out actually. But I'm going to say straight away, that's a lovely beer, this one. So Davor gave me a good bit of advice there to use this for 2,500. That is pretty awesome, I have to say. Yeah, this is lovely and juicy. I would have expected it to just be a little bit more kind of puckering and sharp in the beginning, but this beer it's lovely and juicy, and it's actually really nice and drinkable. It feels like it's got a lot of depth to it. For you know, it's got a lot of depth on the woody side of things as well. Actually, yeah, I really did not expect it to be quite as straight up and juicy as that. I thought it would really be quite a puckering beer, and it would make all that. It would take a while for the mouth to adjust and things, but you can drink this straight off the bat. Beautiful beer, I have to say. I really like this one. So big thumbs up to Brouwerij Boon for this. I do need to try a few more of the beers. I do have one of the black label ones at home. It's a big 750 of it's a big 750 of the black label. So you'll see that reviewed around Christmas time potentially. We'll see about that. But yeah, it is really nice, this one. So where to start with this beer then? So the thing we always have to talk about with the sour beers is the impact. So when you take these beers in, as I always say, one of the things you'll notice, they always come in usually very puckering, and then it's all about how the beer makes that transition of flavour. So when you take this one in, it does have just a little bit of sharpness to it, which is great. I mean, it's got that lovely, you do take this in and it's got a very juicy, you get that cherryish sharpness there, and then you can feel the fruits just kind of almost washing over the top of your tongue. But yeah, middle third of your palate and the back third of your palate, you can feel that nice, smooth, oaky, woody character in there. The thing that's interesting about it is I think the wood, it has a lovely smoothness to it, but you do feel the wood drying out a little bit the further that you go into the aftertaste with this one, and it almost develops just a tiny little hint of a slightly spicy character the further that you go into the aftertaste with this one. But most definitely the oaky, woody flavours in this beer are forming the backbone of it 100%, absolutely. So yeah, that is really nice. I mean, you can feel if you go towards the back third of your palate, the kind of, you do get a little bit of a kind of woody. You can feel a little bit of a dryness, and that's where you start to get some of those slightly spicy notes out of the wood that I was talking about. But as you move further forward, the wood really smoothens out. In the middle third of your palate, you can feel there is just a very slight sort of, it's almost like a kind of Werther's Original butter candy type thing. You do get a little bit of that in the very centre of your palate, and that's where the kind of that's where the booze of the beer is kind of covered up. I mean, 8% ABV. This one I think is one of the boozier lambics that I've had so far. Actually, I think I think the other ones have all been around, you know, the kind of 6% or so. I honestly can't remember. Beautiful beers from Fontaine and Hansen's Artisanal, Cantillon and things like that. But yeah, I mean, for I think at 8%, this one is one of the heavier ABV lambics that we've had, but it covers its booze very, very well actually. But you can feel the flavour of this one. Maybe that's the reason this beer's a little bit more kind of juicy as well, is the fact that it has a little bit more alcohol in it. The other thing that's quite possible with this is that it's even heavier than that because it's bottle fermentation. It's aged for 4 years. So yeah, that's another thing we have to think about too. But yeah, the flavours out of this are just lovely. I mean, on that, if you're in that middle third of your palate, the further forward that you go, you do get a nice, you do get a little bit more of a kind of vanilla note evolving out of this beer, which I think is really nice. So yeah, in that middle third of your palate, as I say, when you go further forward, you've got a nice, you have a nice little bit of just a vanilla flavour. You can get that nice smooth vanilla quality just coming out at the front of that middle third of your palate. So yeah, the fruity notes that come out in front of that are very, very nice as well. So yeah, it's I mean, in terms of complexity and stuff like this, a lot of the flavours that you get out of this beer, that little teeny fruit fly wanting some of my lambic, you're no having it. But yeah, that little, you know, the way that everything kind of goes together in this one, it's one of these beers where it's not, it's all about how the flavours fit together rather than being like madly complex as you'll get from some of these imperial stouts and other kind of crazy beers. And this beer, it's all about the balance of flavour for me. That's what the lambics are all about. It's all about the balance of flavour in these, and then the transition of flavour that they make as well. And this one does it really, really well. You know, Krieks are very nice beers in that sense. I've always liked the Flanders Reds as well, and I think, you know, it's these cherry red fruity sort of beers. I've always really enjoyed these kind of things. Yeah, it is really, really nice, this one. The woody, you can feel the woody flavour, as I say, just drying out a little bit the further that you go into the aftertaste. But anyway, on the back corners of the palate there is definitely a little touch of earthiness there. As you move further forward, the earthy notes just kind of smoothen out a little bit. You've got a wee touch of a herbal quality in there, and then as you reach the front corners of the palate there is a tiny, tiny little remnant of a slightly floral note, and around the very front curve of the tongue I do get a little bit of grassiness lingering there. It might be placebo, that, because of how old the beer is. Maybe it's just I'm used to getting these flavours there, so I kind of automatically detect them a little bit. It could well be that, especially, as I say, because they use old hops in these beers, and this one is 4 years old, so most of the hoppy character will have gone out of it. But yeah, it does have quite a lot of these types of flavours in it, which I really, really like. In terms of the fruity side of the beer then, as I always say, the fruity part of the beer comes out on the front third of your tongue. When you take this one in, as I say, you do get a little bit of sharpness off the cherries, but very, very quickly this beer makes the transition to be nice and big and juicy in a lot of ways. So yeah, to say, just behind the front curve of the tongue, you'll feel that nice sort of sharpness coming out of the beer, but you get a lot of juiciness coming out of this one. Like I say, if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate there, you do get a little bit, you can feel the kind of almost the kind of darker side of the cherries in there. It's almost a little bit kind of cakey, almost if you go to that border between the front third of your tongue and the middle third of your tongue, it does almost have a little bit of a kind of fruit cakey, boozy cherry sort of thing out it, which I think is very, very nice. But then yeah, as you move further forward on this one, you start to get the you can feel the fruits just kind of mellow out a little bit, and you start to get the more juicy notes. You do get a little bit of a kind of plummy note to this one, a little bit of a juicy plummy figgy kind of thing as you progress further forward. And as you reach the front part of your palate in this one, I think it gives you the impression of a little bit of a blackcurranty blackberry sort of thing, but of course you've got that the juicy cherries just kind of sit on top of that. And of course the beer doesn't have plums, raisins and blackcurrants and blackberries in it, but the flavours that you get out of it are quite similar to those in my mind. So it's really interesting how the cherry itself can create the sort of illusion, if you like, with these other fruits there. It just kind of shows you how this kind of the cherry esters can really create all these different sort of things. It really is very, very juicy, and I would have expected this actually to be a little bit more kind of sharp and round. And I'm curious to try the other Boon beer that I have, because I'm curious to try the other Boon beer that I have, because you know these ones I'm curious to know, because between as you go from brewery to brewery with these lambics, I'm assuming there will be a kind of sort of trait between each brewery, whereas, like for example, you know, these guys are a little bit sharper and more citrusy, you know, these ones are more juicy. So I do wonder with that. This one has got me wondering whether the Boon beers are a little bit more kind of juicy, rather, like sort of juicy in their character rather than being really sharp and puckering. I'd be very curious to know that actually. That's why I said earlier it would have been cool to have this one to taste alongside like a brand new one. So yeah, dogs out playing. But yeah, lovely, lovely beer this one, as I say. There's just a whole lot of really nice flavour to this one. But yeah, I think we've covered the flavour profile on this one as much as we really can, and as I say, you get that nice slightly drier woody character coming out of the beer as well. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, I would say that this one has, I'd say that this beer, it's definitely mid-bodied compared to everything else. It is right in the middle of the spectrum. I actually find this one really quite clean and almost quite crisp compared to some of the other lambics that I remember having. The you know, the carbonation in this one again is quite smooth. It's got quite a wet and slightly oily mouthfeel to it as well. There is just a little bit of an oiliness in there too, which is really quite nice. I like how that goes together. In terms of like bitterness and stuff like that, this will be very low IBUs, maybe about 10 or something like that, but there is a wee touch of bitterness to the beer. The malty base in the centre of your palate's got a lovely kind of big smoothness. It's almost quite slick in certain ways as well. There is a wee touch of sweetness in there, and you've got a really juicy, fruity note to this one. As I said, the sourness for me in this one and the puckering qualities in this beer are really quite low actually. I mean, compared to some of the other ones, it's nowhere near as puckering as I've had from some of these other sour beers. But that said, it's a beautiful, beautiful beer, this one, and if you do manage to come across this, I think you will very much enjoy it. I will need to try a new version of this one of the newer vintages at some point and just see if that is thicker, because I do wonder with the aging of these beers, yeah, maybe they do mellow out and they just become a little bit more juicy with time and things. So that's definitely worth investigating a little bit. So we'll see about doing that. But yeah, this has been an awesome beer to review for number 2500. Once again, a massive thank you to Davor Šireč from Slovenia for making this one possible, and a big thank you to Chris Contreras as well for getting me into this whole lambic thing with the beer. It's been really interesting to get more into these over the last little while, and you're always discovering new things when it comes to craft beer and stuff like this. You're always learning about different things, and that's one of the things that I love about this channel. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you to you guys again for your support over the last 7.5 years, and thank you for watching my videos and for watching this one. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what some of your favourite creeks and stuff are in the comments below. Do let me know what your favourite beer from Boon is as well. You will see the black label reviewed at some point later on, like I said, so very much looking forward to that. But it's been awesome to review this one for you. This one was the Oude Kriek Mariage Parfait 2016 vintage from Brouwerij Boon in Halle in Lambeek, to the southwest of Brussels in Belgium. Check out my social media, check out Brouwerij Boon's websites and social media and stuff like that as well, and I will catch you guys very soon. This was review number 2500, the Oude Kriek Mariage Parfait 8% ABV from Brouwerij Boon down in Belgium. Catch you guys with the next one. Slange, skull, cheers, Proust, santé.